Have you ever been fired? Welcome to the Peace Place with Phil. I'm Phil. I got fired. I was so ashamed that I wouldn't talk about it. A few months later, I ran into one of my former co-workers, and he said, "Phil, why did you leave?" I said, "The boss fired me." He said, "We heard you went back east to join him in a private club he was taking over." I said, "No, I don't know where that came from." He said, "We kind of suspected something when the man he hired to replace you was his boyfriend." Another time, it was the last job I had where I wore a three-piece suit. It was on the edge of the public relations business on Madison Avenue in New York City. Whoop, excuse me. There we go. And I grew to hate the job. And I already decided that it would be more fun to drive a taxi cab in New York City. And yes, both my wife and my mother were ashamed of me. But it was so much fun. It really was. The day I walked in to resign, my boss and I both started to speak at the same time. As he said, "I'm sorry, Phil, I'm going to have to let you go," I said, "I'm sorry, boss, but I'm going to have to resign." We both had a good laugh. But you know, sometimes being fired is a wonderful wake-up call. In the case of that last job at the agency, I was fired because I wasn't doing the job well. And as I just said, I hated the job, and it was a wake-up call to get on with my life and try doing something that I really enjoyed. Well, as the years went by, my wife and I owned several bars and restaurants, and in the course of having employees, I think the most I ever had was 29 at one time, you have to fire somebody. And one night, I was going into work, and we were talking, and she said, "You're going to have to let so-and-so go, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Every time you fire somebody, you got to get angry, and that's how you fire them." I thought about it. I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, this time, why don't you just sit down and talk to him quietly and decently? You might like it better." So I tried it. I asked him to step into the office, and before I could say a word, and I asked him how he was, you know, I was being social. He says to me, "You're going to have to let me go, aren't you, because I'm not doing the job right?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He apologized. That night, I get home, I'm talking to Anna, and I said to her, I told her what happened. And she said, "See, it's all right to get fired. Sometimes it's your fault because you ain't doing the job well. Other times it's a wake-up call to move on through to the other side of life." In my case, it opened doors upon doors for work and fulfillment, and eventually love, because I changed my lifestyle, that I never would have known. So I think it's that way with all setbacks. Certainly we get them, and we don't want them, and we don't like them, but we get them. So the next time life hands you one of those kind of situations, take a moment, you know, when you get over the shock of it, and ask yourself, is this not a door opening? Is it not going to be helpful? Sometimes it is. If you can see it that way, it'll make it all easier. You'll move on with your life, very possibly in a better place. Give it a try. Well, that's about it for tonight. I thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful week. God bless.